So Mike Huckabee is on Piers Morgan, and he is going to be educating Piers Morgan on the truth about Israel. So before we start, make sure to like, subscribe, share, leave your comments. Follow me, Rafi the Realtor, for all of your real estate needs in Miami and the greater South Florida area, and you can support the channel via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the pinned comment or description. Let's get into it.
Deal that's been announced with Hamas. I interviewed earlier the official spokesman for Hamas, who seemed to be going along with the idea this was a deal that could potentially work, whilst at the same time persisting in saying, for example, that on October the 7th, nobody from Hamas committed any crime or deliberately targeted any civilians, and if anyone did, it was a mistake, not a plan, which obviously were abhorrent blood libels that he was spewing. And it made me think I listened to this guy. He was the one who, after October the 7th, went on camera and said, we're going to do this again and again and again, and said they were wedded to the annihilation and destruction of Israel. Can Israel do any deal with Hamas? Is there any point that you could actually trust Hamas, which many view to be a terrorist organization, to be any kind of body that you could do a deal with?
Well, first of all, they are a terrorist organization. They've been designated that way. The United States certainly has designated them that, so is Israel. And I think most civilized countries in the world would. The reason we know that Hamas did what they did on October 7th, because they were proud of it. They were so proud, in fact, that they strapped GoPro cameras to their heads and they videotaped themselves raping, slaughtering, beheading, butchering, massacring women, children, and elderly people. That's how we know they did it, and they boasted about it. They boasted about it online. They boasted about it in phone calls. They boasted about it on the videotape that they shot. They boasted about it as they took the naked bodies of young women who had been kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival and paraded them down the streets of Gaza, beating their dead bodies. So, this guy has zero credibility. And I think that it's very important to understand that if there's any way in which Hamas wants to make a deal, the first thing they have to do is what they said they were going to do last October, and that's they're going to disarm and demilitarize. They haven't done it yet. So when they do, then we can take them a little more seriously. I hope they do. It would be a wonderful gift to the world if Hamas did not have weapons, because if they have them, they're just nutty enough to want to use them to slaughter people, particularly civilians and innocent people. They don't need weapons. They need to disappear and go away.
If Hamas do keep their word, which I think is highly unlikely, but let's assume for a moment they do, and they do demilitarize, is there a scenario where the United States and Israel would accept Hamas continuing to be a governing body in Gaza, for example?
I don't think so. The president has made it very clear, regardless of what Israel would say. President Trump said repeatedly that Hamas has no future in Gaza. I think they forfeited the future. It would be like asking, would it be okay if the Nazis continued to run Germany after World War II? I can't imagine anyone, I don't care who they are, who would believe that that had any credibility whatsoever. So Hamas has forfeited any hope that they're going to have a role in governing Gaza. What they should hope for is that they would be given some level of asylum, that they could get out of Gaza, disappear, find some place to live anonymously in asylum. But the idea that they're going to govern Gaza, I don't think the people in Gaza would tolerate it, much less the United States or Israel, or hopefully any other civilized country in the world.
Let's just pivot quickly to Iran. I spoke to President Trump on Sunday night about this, and he reiterated to me what he was saying publicly, that he was ready, locked and loaded, to launch the biggest bombardment of Iran the world had seen since World War II. Would that have been a smart move if the president had gone ahead with that kind of strike?
The only person who can make that decision is the president. All of us who work for him trust his instincts. If he says it's time to go, we're going to be behind it. If for whatever reason, in having talked to many people in the Gulf countries, and they urged him to give, as John Lennon would so brilliantly say, give peace a chance, to give one more round of negotiations an opportunity, and he made that decision. So let's see if it works. Let's hope it does. But if it doesn't, I think the president has also made it very clear that there is the military option. It's on the table, and if he takes it, it's not going to be a mild tap. It is going to be overwhelming.
This war has not been going the way Donald Trump thought or the way he was told it would go by the Israelis when they met with him in the White House Situation Room before it began. Would it not be better politically, economically, putting aside anything else, for the United States to extricate itself from this war, claim a victory, do what Trump does very well, just paper over the cracks and just say, look, we've achieved these aims, boom, 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 and just get the hell out of this?
Well, first of all, I was in the Situation Room when that discussion was held, and I do disagree with any narrative that says that the Israelis talked Donald Trump into it. That simply did not happen. Nobody talked him into anything. Piers, you know President Trump really well. You've known him a long time. You know him better than most people who do interviews on TV. And I think it's pretty fair to say that he is not a man that is easily led around by the nose. The idea that the Israelis came in and sold him something is probably just one of the more preposterous things. It was based on the fact that for over 47 years, Iran has been saying death to America. They've begged, pleaded, worked, strived to build a nuclear weapon. And for what purpose? To first destroy Israel. That's always been their goal. That's the appetizer. But ultimately, they've said this for 47 years. Their goal is to annihilate America. America is the entree. And so a lot of Americans may not have even been around in 1979 when the Ayatollahs took power and they frog marched blindfolded embassy employees across the embassy grounds, held them hostage, 51 of them for 444 days. I remember it quite well. And I remember the humiliation that we felt in America. I remember the chanting of death to America, the burning of our flags, and the threats that have never ceased, nor have they ever moderated. I think the president was looking after how can I best protect the American public. The proxies of Iran are already in the Western Hemisphere. Hezbollah alone is in 12 Western Hemisphere countries. The idea that this is some unique Middle East issue or it's only an Iranian-Israeli issue is utter nonsense. These people have ambitions, not necessarily to rule the world, but to destroy every part of it that does not agree with their radical Shia philosophy.
The problem, it seems to me, with this war is that the Iranians have worked out that if you control the Strait of Hormuz and you terrorize your Gulf state neighbors by firing off rockets and missiles at them, thereby destabilizing their business models based around come here, it's sunny, it's safe, it's exciting, and so on, that by working that out in this kind of asymmetric war they've been waging, that has, in many people's eyes, emboldened the Iranian regime rather than dismantled them.
I think one of the problems, Piers, is that the Iranians don't think rationally. They don't think in a way that Westerners think. Any attempt to Americanize their worldview or the way that they will approach an issue is fatal on its face. They don't look at life like we look at life, like most of Western countries look at life. They look at it completely differently. So for them, whether this takes 10 years or 1,000 years, their goals don't change. Their methods might get more sophisticated. But I think the president's doing something that is the right way to look at it. First of all, he's prepared to bomb them, but he's also focused on bankrupting them because he knows that if they don't have money, if their economy collapses, if the people get fed up with watching this government, this Iranian regime, brutalize its own people, murdering tens of thousands of them for simply protesting, and then making life miserable for the rest of them, there may come the moment at which the people of Iran say, that's enough. And they're the ones who, if anyone, will take down the regime and give the Persian Empire, the Persian culture, the Persian people an opportunity to once again live free and thrive as they once did, quite nobly.
Final question for you, Ambassador Huckabee, and I really appreciate you coming on the program again. Israel's global popularity has been plummeting in the last 2 years in particular, and notably in the United States, where now nearly two-thirds of Americans have a negative view of Israel, where half the country thinks Netanyahu should be arrested when he comes to the United States. As somebody who is based in Israel, who knows the Israeli people very well, this has got to be a concern, hasn't it? Again, my interview with the Hamas spokesman, one of the things he said is that, however you want to categorize what they did on October the 7th, I view it as a despicable terror attack. He obviously views it as something else. But however you view it, I questioned that the strategy had obviously failed. And he countered by saying, but look how unpopular Israel now is, suggesting that they had in some way provoked an overreaction from Israel, as many people see it, which has made Israel increasingly a global pariah. Does that concern you?
Of course it does, because it's unfair. It's unfounded. It concerns me a great deal because obviously there's an enormous propaganda campaign that is aimed against Israel and against the Jewish people. And I think that's really disturbing to me because the entirety of the number of Jews on the entire face of the earth is 16 million, half of whom live in Israel. The other half mostly live in the U.S., mostly New York, maybe Miami. But the idea that a people, a very small minority of 0.05% of the population of the world, is somehow the biggest threat to the world, on its face, Piers, that's crazy. I mean, that is the kind of thing that you just scratch your head and say, really? But they are up against a multi-billion-dollar propaganda campaign and a lot of money being spent in the United States on university campuses, on social media. The bots are everywhere, painting a picture of the Jewish people as a whole and the Israelis specifically that is simply absolutely unfounded. And I say that as somebody who's been coming to this country for 53 years, since 1973, who lives here now as the U.S. ambassador and who interacts with the Israelis every single day of my life. And it is appalling to me, the reputation that has been thrust upon them. And it is ridiculously and horribly unfounded. I just want the truth to be told. Israelis aren't perfect. Jewish people aren't perfect. None of us are. But the blood libels that are thrown upon them should be really something that every civilized, every thoughtful, every intellectually capable person, every knowledgeable person would say what you want about the Israelis, about the Jewish people, but these things that are being said, they're just not true.
People criticize Mike Huckabee because he's, a shill for Israel and he's collecting his $7,000. Mike Huckabee is a proud Christian man. He loves Israel, loves the Jewish people, and I salute him for it. And he's right. Jews are not perfect. Israel's not perfect. Our shit stinks like everyone else's. But the reason why we are always slandered, in my opinion, is a deeper spiritual reason. And the deeper spiritual reason is because God gave us a responsibility. As chosen people, he gave us a responsibility to be a light unto the nations, to show the world what God wants from the world. And the Jews are simply a messenger in doing so. We're not better, we're not worse, we are equal in value in the world. The reason why we are so heavily punished, judged, persecuted, killed is because innately everyone understands that the Jews have the deeper answers, that Judaism is what brought monotheism to the world. It's what brought one God to the world. It has brought the 10 Commandments, the 7 Noahide laws, rules of morality, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish people to follow those values and to teach those values. And the fact of the matter is when Jews are not following those values, the rest of the world is in chaos. And so to a major degree, although we are only 0.5% of the population, 0.05% of the population, we do have a massive influence on what goes on, whether for good or for bad. So with that said, make sure to subscribe, like, share, leave your comments. Follow me at Rafi the Realtor for all of your real estate needs in the Miami and Greater South Florida area, and you can support the channel. You can go right now, click on the pinned comment or the description, and you can donate whatever amount feels good to you. I thank you as always for watching. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to you tuning into the next one. Until next time, peace.